Good morning, everyone. Judges, if you will permit me, I'd like to carry out a survey. You see, the attendance is quite impressive, so what I'm going to do is ask them one question. All right? So everyone present over there, what you have to do is, if the answer is yes, you're going to raise your hand. I'll name the cell phones, name the companies that bring cell phones to the market, and you'll have to say whether you use it or not. Number one, is there any Nokia users? Okay, we have one. All right, number two, HTC. We have one again. Number three, Apple. We have many. And number four, Samsung. Well, the point is that the current telecom market is quite saturated and there are a lot of competitors. But then if we go back before the year of recession, that is in 2007, the market leaders were Nokia. But then the recession had brought a big change, and now Samsung are the leaders. But then again, there might come times where they might lose that position, the pole position. And in order to sustain that, we are Team University of Dhaka, representing of Wasim Saad, Siam Rahman, Samuel Hussain, and myself, Sanjir Ali. And today we are here to provide a solution that will help Samsung gain sustainability and a proper growth in near future. So moving on, what are the core issues of this case? The first thing that we have to deal with is sustained growth. As we know that in recession, most of the telecom companies were either affected hugely or were drained away, except for Apple. But then Apple had that edge which would be explained by our next presenter. But before that, we have to sustain growth. That is, we have to grow periodically or yearly. When the market grows, we have to grow as well as the market leaders. Secondly, we have to focus on the gross margin. As we all know that right now, the product development cost is increasing. But how do we maintain the gross margin? That will be explained by our next presenter as well. And thirdly, competitors. The competitors in this market are entering regularly. How do we compete with them? What they are doing is they are always going for innovative approaches. That gives them the edge. So at the same time, we have to move in the same way. We have to compete with them head to head. And we have to provide an edge that will ensure us that no, Samsung will always be the market leaders. Now, in order to solve the core problems, we have divided them into two aspects. Number one is the internal factors. The internal factors that we have to deal with is admin expenses, R&D, production cost, and marketing cost. How is it related? As we said earlier, the three core issues, one of them was maintaining the gross margin. And in order to maintain the gross margin, we have to keep these things in mind, and we have to provide a proper solution that will help us in the long run. And number two, the external factors. The external factors, number one, is the semiconductor market. I guess all of you know that Samsung and Apple had a bad relationship in the past year or so regarding the lawsuit. What happened was, of the 85% semiconductor that Samsung produced, all of them went to Apple. But now, since the relationship has become sour, what we have to do is either we have to look for new investments, or we have to look for new buyers, or what we have to do is we have to improve the relationship with Apple. The solution will be said by our speakers later on. The second thing is stiff competition. As I said earlier, new competitors are entering, new competitors are bringing an edge that are giving them incentives for the buyers to go for their brand. We have to stand out as well. And the last thing is Google. Google right now has purchased Motorola, and in new future, Google will be a big threat. Because Google itself can stand out as a brand, as an innovative brand, and it will give them every edge that they need. And lastly, the market risk involved. What are the risks in the market that will be affected in the short run and in the long run? All of this will be explained by the later presenters, but now Samuel will come forward with the internal factors.
Thank you, Sanjeev, for the beautiful presentation. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the sea is red. It's bloody sea because we have huge chunk of competitors. Now, to increase the profitability, we have to actually look for the competitors, what they're doing and where we're lagging. So if you look at the main vendors, Apple, Huawei, ZTE, and Samsung, and have compared the administrative cost and R&D cost. So you can see the cost of Apple is the lowest, while Huawei and ZTE use a chunk of money in admin and R&D. But when you look at Samsung, there is an issue. 20% of the whole margin, sales is actually used up in administrative cost. This is a price we cannot afford to pay if we want to be profitable in the long run. So this is where we need to improve ourselves. We believe that administrative cost can be cut in many ways. First of all, the easiest way out is cutting down number of employees. But what we would look forward to is efficiency. Because in this current market or in the current age of globalization, efficiency is all that matters. As we have seen in the production sector of Samsung itself, efficiency must be ensured. That's why we believe this huge chunk of administrative cost can be cut, and also in case of sales, because if we go for outsourcing in new countries or in some of the countries where possible, in the whole selling or retailing process, this cost, administrative cost, can be cut in some parts. And this cost cutting would be remunerated later on to increase our sales, as we'll be seeing later on. So this is our first sector criteria in internal factors, that cutting administrative cost. Next on, what we have is the second one, the chain, the production chain of Samsung. As you can see, from the market research to product development, then design, then manufacturing the different parts, then assembling, and from them to the different retailers, so to the consumers. Now, this is a chain that is currently used to produce the products that we see in our hands. Now, as it has been said already in the case, if we move on, it has been said already in the case that this is a pretty efficient process. The R&D we already see is quite efficient, because that's why we have the Galaxy S4, which is a huge hit in the market. So we believe the R&D is pretty up to the market itself. And the production cost, it's a very efficient production system in Samsung. They do it themselves, and they have increased the efficiency by 200%, as has been said in the case. So therefore, we believe these are the two factors we need to maintain. We do not need to grow weaker on them, or we don't even need to grow stronger. These are the things we need to maintain. If we maintain these, we can, through the other mediums, increase our sales and revenue. Next on, we'll be seeing that. Here, the marketing costs. This is the sector where we believe we can improve. How? As we have been saying, we want to decrease the administration cost, right? So, how this helps? See, if we decrease the administrative cost, that is the blue one, we would be using that money in marketing. Therefore, we believe through this and through our segmentation and targeting, we can actually increase the number of sales. Marketing, segmenting, targeting. The segmenting and targeting would be explained later on. So, the total intention is to use the same amount of money but increase sales. How? By using more in marketing area. So this is the internal factors we're discussing, and through these ways we can actually sum up in more revenue generation and more sales. The external factors would now be brought on by Wasim.
Thank you, Samuel. The first factor we'll be looking at is basically competitor analysis, and here we have Apple, Nokia, Huawei, and ZTE. So in Apple, the pros they have basically is innovation and customer insight, which basically means they continuously are able to come up with new products which cater to the market, and people like their products continuously. And the cons is supply and pricing risk, which means that they are dependent for their raw materials to other manufacturers, and there is a risk of prices going up or supply becoming a bottleneck. And also another pro of Apple, another con of Apple is the fact that some people are saying that Apple might run out of innovation after the Apple iPhone 5. Next, we have Nokia. The pro is the somewhat depleted brand value. They were a good firm once, but then what happened was they came up with products that did not cater to the market, and eventually they lost a lot of market share. And basically the con is that it's a failure to evolve. And next we have Huawei. Basically, Huawei and ZTE are big global communication companies and who are looking to get into the cell phone industry. They both have good R&D capabilities and they have good connections, but the only problem they have, and which is a big advantage for us, is the fact that they are non-premium brand. Next, we'll take a look at the external factors in the market. Say in the low-end market, we have ZTE, Nokia, and Samsung, and Sony, sorry. And in the high-end market, we have Apple and Panasonic. So what we're trying to say here is in the low-end to mid-end market, we'll try to target Nokia. You see, Nokia is losing their market share pretty quickly. As we've seen, we saw maybe only one user of Nokia, and we're thinking that it will be pretty easy for Samsung to cater to the Nokia market, the one they're losing. And Sony and Panasonic, they're making good phones, but we feel that we have a competitive edge over them. So basically, in the mid to low end market, we're targeting Nokia, Sony, and Panasonic. Now, Apple is the big question. Apple is the high end. Now, what we feel is for the mid and to low end market, the question of value comes down to this. There is a sweet spot which you need to cater to. There is a price and there is a function, and you give them the product that gives you the best bang for buck. But when it comes to high-end, the idea is to give them a product which makes them think that it is worth it, that they'll pay the money. That is what basically Apple did. But how do we ensure that we can do it? There are two ways basically. One is going to our customers and asking them, what would you like? And another way, which is more risky, but the returns could be immense, is assuming that we know better than the customers what they really want. This is what basically companies like Sony did when it came to Walkmans, and what Apple did when it came to iPhones. Before iPhone came out, if Apple went to the customers and asked them what kind of phone you want, they would probably answer, I want a phone with a very good camera, good screen, but very few would be able to answer the fact that they want a phone which is close to iPhone, a touchscreen interface. So this is the idea that if you can come up with a product which you feel that would cater to the customer's mind, but he does not know it, this is bound to be an outstanding hit. But the risk is immense. You might come up with products that don't actually do it, and the cost will be huge. So what we're suggesting is always look forward to what they might be thinking, and there's a mix of both of them. Basically, go for a product that they might want, and also products that we feel that they might want, a mix of both. Next is the external factors and semiconductor market. Now, the issue here is that we see that from 2007 to 2012, there, as percentage of revenue, it went from 23% to 17%. But we must understand that during this time, the Galaxy phones were a big hit. So it might sound like the semiconductor business took a huge hit, but the truth is the revenue generation from Galaxy phones went up so high that as a percentage, semiconductor business went down. But that does not mean that we did not suffer a loss. We did suffer a loss, but we think that that is not a very big issue, and we think that it is possible to solve this issue in a normal basis. That would be through basically creating relationships and Google dominance. This is the fact that we are completely reliant on Android basis. And in an ideal world, we would obviously want to have an operating system that we have complete control over, and also that does not pose a big threat to us. But the situation here is that Android is the market leader, and we are completely reliant on it. And in the foreseeable future, we don't see how we could come out of it. And this gives Google a big leverage over us. But we hope that in future, next slide please, we will be able to come up with OSs, or new OSs would come, which would reduce the dominance of Android OS in the market. One example could be the Tizen OS, which Samsung and Linux are jointly trying to bring up. We don't know if this will be a success or not, but over the long term, we would like to have a market where we have more control over the OS. Now I'll pass it on to Siam, who will take you through next.
Thank you very much, Saad. Now that we are done with all the analysis, in-depth market analysis, now we move on to how actually we promote our Samsung phones to the worldwide customer base. Firstly, we want to introduce a value for money branding in developing countries. It has been mistakenly written developed, I'm sorry about that. Why the value for money branding in developing countries? There is a big market out there, other than the premium market. Yes, we don't want you to misunderstand that Samsung has to stay in the premium segment, no doubt about that. Yes, they have to compete with Apple, they have to compete with HTC, and of course, they need to maintain their premium brandship and maintain their #1 base if they wish to survive in the long run. But in developing countries, especially in Africa, the Middle East, and of course, South Asia, from where we come, there's a huge demand for low-priced cell phones which offer value for money. And what can be Samsung's answer to these? Firstly, we have the competitors ZTE and Huawei, and of course, nameless other 1,000 Chinese brands which are flooding these markets. How can Samsung possibly compete with these markets when their administrative and selling expenses are so high? How can they offer value for money pricing? Forgive me for giving such an explicit example, but I'd like to take up the example of the Samsung Galaxy Y phone. The Galaxy Y or young phones are a huge hit in India, Bangladesh, and in some parts of Africa and the Middle East. Why? Firstly, it offers a competitive price, which is very suitable for students and the lower middle class people. Secondly, it is an Android phone, and it has the brand name of Samsung. That's the most important part. Some people do objectify brand name over many other things. So even if they do get a little high performance, yet the brand name of Samsung, yes, they will go for it. And we have targeted Nokia for this very reason. What is Nokia's current business now? It is already a sinking ship. But that sinking ship is still selling products that, yes, they are selling high in some developing countries. Through these low-end, low-priced, value-for-money cell phones, we can and will exterminate Nokia's current market share and bring on some more share for Samsung in an aggressive marketing campaign. Secondly, most of the world does not know the extent Samsung uses green technology. Their offices and their manufacturing plants and also the chemical elements and the metals they use in their phones, they are very, very eco-friendly. And Samsung has been rated as one of the lowest carbon emitting companies in Asia. Now, what significance does that have? Currently, in the developed world, the major customer base is very, very aware of the ecological consequences of their own buying behavior. But Samsung has not yet focused on this point in their promotions. If they can get this message through to the people of the developed world that yes, here you are using a phone which does not only reduce carbon emissions while it is being manufactured, but also its ingredients are eco-friendly and biodegradable, then we believe that a large portion of the eco-friendly consumer base should shift to Samsung. And then again, another part that Samsung has not yet focused on in its promotions. Maybe out of modesty, I don't know what, but the factories in South Korea where the Samsung phones are made, there are no trade unions, no worker strikes, and apparently they just might be the happiest workers because there has been no reported strikes over the past few years. Why? They are offered stock incentives and some portion of the profit. I'm not completely sure about that, but if we can focus on these, and I would like to remind you that when the Samsung Galaxy S4 was brought out, they had a very impressive tagline, made for humans. Taking this humanitarian cause into regard, we can promote it like made for humans, made by happy humans. With this humanitarian focus, we can also increase Samsung's brand value. And of course, internet-based branding for all high-tech products, and of course, cell phones and also other electronic goods are very important. Now the buyer behaviors have changed. The word of mouth has changed in a lot into the word of mouse. The internet mouse I'm talking about. Yes, many people go on to the top-rated cell phone sites where there are reviews, and they check the number of stars. The most number of stars the cell phone has, maybe yes, S4 and the iPhone 5. If any site gives the S4 more stars, it might be true, it might not be. But yes, that does influence consumer behavior a lot. So we need to get a grip on these forums. We need to enhance our reputation on the internet. We need to have a bigger grasp over the internet world, the forums, the bloggers, and the cell phone site reviews. And of course, we will give incentives for distributors. Currently, Samsung's distribution and sales is apparently the only part of our entire supply chain which is outsourced. Now, what can we do to increase the number of Samsung cells on the shelves of the countries of the developed and developing nations of the world? The answer is very easy. We can provide incentives to the distributors. On this basis, perhaps the more sales you gain, or the more cell phones you buy for selling, we can give them a discount if it is possible. And this discount is possible only for our low-priced handsets in the developing countries. Next slide, please. Now, the semiconductor market, the promotion is not at all above the table. Yes, it has to be a BTL promotion aimed at the consumers of the semiconductors. So we will firstly, and our main competitor in this market is the manufacturers who have lower costs of producing the semiconductors and who can provide them at lesser prices than us. So we have to focus on the superior quality that the Samsung semiconductors have to offer, and we have to grasp that end of the market where the semiconductors will be used for electronically sensitive device or high technology electronic equipment. Secondly, we must cultivate long-term business relationship with our distributors. And of course, as is South Korean, essentially Asian, so this has to be a forte of us, the Asian people, cultivating long-term relationships with people. Thirdly, we can offer incentives like that I explained before. And of course, we can increase the credit term so that they are more induced to buy our slightly higher priced yet better quality semiconductors than from the lower priced and lower quality manufacturers of semiconductors. Next, please. What is our target through all these promotional activities? We have to show a definite quantifiable target. Yes, we have been quite optimistic in this regard. Currently, Samsung has 32.7% of market share. But after these phases, we believe that Samsung can, and again Samsung will, reach a market share of 45%. As you can see here, we have increased the Next slide, please. Thank you, everybody.
I'll keep my comments short. Thanks very much. I'm very glad that the fourth speaker actually drilled down into a bit of detail, because until that point everything sounded very aspirational, and it was only then when you actually came up with some policies which actually sort of made me think, hang on, these guys actually do have an idea for where we're going. My question relates to this subject of efficiency, increasing efficiency by cutting admin costs and possibly allocating that money towards marketing with a view to increasing sales. Obviously, if you take money away from admin, and this is a big company we're talking about, there's a danger, isn't there, that the company may not function quite so efficiently. How are you going to bridge that gap?
So if I may answer the question? All right. When we said about efficiency, the first prioritization that we meant was maintaining the profit margin, the gross margin that they talked about. So what they said in the case was that they were planning to invest more on marketing. So what it happens is, if the expenses are increased, thereby the gross margin will decrease as well. So what we focused on was, since the administrative expense was very large, we decided to cut that down, and the money that we have cut down, we'll use that as the marketing tool or marketing promotional expense. So what it does that is that we don't need any more extra money to add in the marketing segment. And the question of whether or not it will affect the administration or the whole efficiency system, we believe that it will not affect the efficiency system much, because the cutting down will be based on, examples could be, we could decrease the commissions that we provide to the distributors, or we could give them on incentive basis. Supposing if you sell 100 million Samsung products, you will get a commission of 10% each. If it's 50, you get 8%. If it's 25, you get a 6%. And if it's less than that, you get a 5%. So in that case, I guess that is one of the examples, but we did not completely focus on that. Another way, we will cut down the staffs on people where we think that it is actually not necessary to have so many people. So the first priority in maintaining it will be the gross margin, and then making sure that the system is not disrupted.
And sir, if I may add, like as it's been said, there is a culture that's going on in Samsung. It has been mentioned that one CEO, and on the basis of that, there will be 3 separate departments. So we actually want to continue that culture throughout the whole organization, so that the workforce become more focused on the central goal rather than having a huge workforce. We want it to be more efficient according to the culture that has been started in the upper section of the employees. And with that, as it has been said, that we want to cut, maybe we can go for outsourcing in some countries where we have actually Samsung, like Samsung India. Rather than having Samsung India overseeing the whole operation, in some sectors we can go for outsourcing completely. In that case, we'd be required less employees and less infrastructure that would cost less.
If I may add another thing, I think we failed to mention the efficiency part quite well. I think we meant it to be that we can channel our resources a bit more narrowed down. For example, the research and development part of Samsung, 1/4 of them work on robotics. But currently, the current product base of Samsung does not have such a branch line of robotics. So we could outsource some of our researches to some other people. And of course, Samsung already has a wide variety of brand portfolio. As you can see, we focus our entire presentation mainly on the telecommunication, which is the major profit-bringing part of Samsung's product portfolio. We intentionally left out the other consumer electronics because we think that they already are in a stable position and they already have stable growth. We may not have to do much about that. So we have to just channel our resources onto what is most important for Samsung right now. And this is what we actually mean by efficiency, both in a managerial and also a business sense.
So do you think cutting these jobs that becoming more efficient might actually undermine one of your key arguments that you're actually making products for humans, by humans, and that you're actually making them by happy humans, albeit these are happy humans, but they haven't actually got a job anymore.
So thank you, sir. Good pointed, well pointed out. So by happy humans, what we mean the working conditions. But now we need the workers, the basic workers, factory workers, and through that tagline, we intend to promote that the baseline workers who usually believe are actually going through very huge turmoil in their life, they are actually happy in our case. But this is a world that is changing, right? So we cannot afford to have such huge as an administrative expense and intend to have a huge amount of profit in the future. So there should be a balance. We need a good amount of balance. In case of administrative expenses, we expect this balance of happiness in the low-line workers and efficiency, which is already in the low-line workers. We want it to be developed to the high line in the whole administrative system as well. That is what it means, a well-balanced, efficient system.
So if I may add, we see that the production facility of Samsung is quite efficient. So we could safely assume that the problem is in the mid to upper mid section. So we think that cutting down on them would not create such hassle for us.
Okay, thank you, James. Pretty well. I would say my feeling pretty much is that your plan is like a 2013 plan, how to meet your goals, and also a reviving plan. Looks like Samsung has some problem. But in reality, what we're talking about, the subject is to sustain growth, right? How to enable the brand to go on. I think it's a very short term and basically lack of the channel strategy and also product strategy and how promotion can ultimately lead to result and a longer term sustainability of the business. So do you mind answering my concerns on your plan, which is mainly, I see a lot of short-term strategy but not long-term goals?
Basically what we were trying to say when it came to high-end market Apple, we feel that the era of Apple, the touch phone industry, I think we think that it is coming to a, sort of an saturated end. Because nowadays in the last few generations of smartphones, we've basically seen an evolution. The processor speeds are going up, touchscreen is getting better, but a large-scale revolution is not coming. And we see that in this industry, every, let's say, 5 to 7 years, a new sort of revolution comes. And we're pretty much banking on that there will be a change, and we're hoping that Apple won't be able to capitalize on that as they did on the iPhone. And that would be the major game changer for us, because if we can overtake Apple, we don't think there is anyone that can challenge us in the business.
I think, sir. Thank you for your legitimate concern, and we also thought about it a bit. But the thing is, we found it quite impossible to actually predict the scenario of the mobile market after even 3 or 4 years, not even 5 years. For a long-term plan, we had to go at least for 5 years. But as we discussed, we found out that this self-market, and especially the entire high technology market of the entire world, is changing so fast that there is no way that us undergraduate business students can actually predict what the market scenario would be. So we thought that we would focus on the primary goals, the current scenario, at least for 1 or 2 years, and then as an additional long-term incentive, we added only one thing. We admit it might be a limitation, but we added the one thing that we have to get free from Google. And Samsung in the future might develop its own operating system, which might be used in all other handsets, just like Android is right now. Android came, Android might go, and then Samsung might capitalize on it. But so we're sorry if there were limitations, but that's why we actually did not include a long-term plan intentionally.
And one more question is, why focus so much on driving promotion? Because in the business world, promotion seems to be a very costly strategy, not long-term, and it will actually bring down your short-term profitability. So, and it's hard to commercialize. So I would like to hear more from you. You spend almost 60% of the time talking about promotion. How does it work?
Thank you, sir. Well, as you see, right now, we're actually banking on the thing that initially we need to capture more of the market, and then we can actually retain that market. because when people change their cell phones, they would come to us again. So initially when we were talking about taking the percentages gained by Nokia, the Sony and other companies, so what we believe that their market can be gained through promotion. That is why we intentionally actually focused more on promotions. And on the whole, if we focus on the case that on the short term, we've actually focused on the internal factors, because we believe if we can continue being efficient in these factors, this would be paying us in the long term as well. Because if we continue to be efficient for the upcoming 10, 15 years, how can someone beat us in case of price? I don't think anyone can. So if we be the best at our internal factors, we believe that would actually give us the highest measure of profitability. So what we're looking at initially through these plans, getting best out of the market right now, and then continuing that. So the promotional activities are actually focused on right now getting the chunk of market share that is possible to be gained. And the long-term plan is actually on capitalizing on that chunk and retaining that chunk, sir.
Thank you. If I may add to the question.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. The point is that the telecommunication industry has gone through a change. What happened was Nokia was the leaders with the Symbian, but then Android came in. And Android came in, and the mindset of the people or the mindset of the consumer has changed. They have shifted to Android. But what did Nokia do? They did not change. They stayed in that Symbian position. So what happened to the consumers who already had an Nokia phone? They wanted to go to an Android phone, but they did not know how. And the people right now who has most of Nokia phone is in the developing countries that we said. So our promotional strategies were basically based on that developing countries. What we are trying to do is that we were trying to convey the message that no, it's time for the change. And if you want to change, Samsung is the product that you should go for. That was the whole strategy.
I agree with this part.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Good presentation.
Thank you, sir.
There are two questions I have. One is, if you were to try and sum up the challenge that Samsung faces right now, what is the key question you're trying to address in your presentation? As you said, there seems to be coverage of a lot of issues, but what is the fundamental question you're trying to address for Samsung? That's one. And the second question I have is, a large part of your presentation has been focusing quite extensively on the handset or the mobile market, which is a big component of their revenue, big component of their operating margins. But Samsung is not a one business organization, it's a conglomerate. So is there an inherent risk that you see in terms of focusing too much on the mobile business, which we know from history, given how Nokia has fared and how some of the other, the competitive landscape is changing, isn't that a very risky strategy for Samsung?
Already in a quite good position right now. So we're looking forward, how can we actually take it to the next level in case of profitability? So the first question is, the first problem we found, internal cost. So how can we maintain, cut the internal cost? That's the first question we addressed. And the second question is, how can we gain long-term, for long-term, the market share? So these are the two questions. Gain, how to reach the long-term market share, and firstly, how to do some cost cutting. So these are the two questions we're actually trying to answer through the whole scenario, and we believe these two questions can actually lead to long-term profitability and long-term sustainability for Samsung. And now, sir, as you mentioned, the other products of Samsung actually focus on two things: the semiconductor business and the mobile business. These, as it has been mentioned in the case, these are the main revenue-generating sectors. So we have been mainly focusing on these two sectors. The other sectors, there was not a lot of data given on that sector. So what we assume that their market shares would be remaining constant in the current market. So not actually losing focus on them, we're just keeping them as it is, so that the market shares remain as they are, and the market remains as there, and the profit that we generate from them doesn't decrease, but it stays at the same level. So that is why we actually didn't elaborately focus on that. We assumed that they would be remaining in the same level.
Sir, if you allow, may I add to the first and second question? All right, the key issue that we are dealing with here is sustainability. Because the first question is, for a business, it is the market leaders, but they want to stay as the market leaders no matter what the change is. So for the matter of sustainability, what we have to do is, we have to make sure the internal environment is 100% efficient. we have to make sure that whenever there is a revolution or there is a change, Samsung should not wash away like Nokia. We have to make sure that whenever there is a technological change or whenever there is a revolution in the mobile industry, we have to keep that in mind, that we stay the market leaders. So basically, the combination of two makes it that we have to make sure the sustainability of Samsung. And regarding the second point as to why we focused on only semiconductors and mobile phones generate 70% of their total revenue, and this is the most volatile. This is changing every 5 to 10 years. So we have to make plans to make sure that if there is another change occurring in the next 2 to 3 years, we have to be prepared and we have to face it in a good way to make sure that no, Samsung is still the market leader. And the second point, semiconductors, as I said earlier, that since the relationship with Apple has been sour, so we need to look for new ways to sell the products. And lastly, for all the other electronic or home appliances that we didn't focus on, it wasn't mentioned much on the case, and there wasn't any mention of a drastic rise or a drastic fall of any product. That's why we believe that this is going at a steady growth, and we wanted to focus more on the points that we believe are game changers.